Eleanor Voss had fired 3 executives before 9 a.m. that Tuesday morning, and she wasn't finished yet. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Meridian Financial Group smelled like fresh leather and ambition, and Eleanor liked it that way. She had built this company from a rented desk in a Cleveland strip mall to a billion-dollar asset management firm, and she ran it the way she ran everything, with precision, with expectations, and with zero tolerance for the kind of soft sentiment that made people weak. Her assistant knew not to bring her coffee unless it was exactly 185 degrees. Her drivers knew not to speak unless spoken to. And her board members knew, without exception, that when Eleanor Voss called a meeting, you arrived 5 minutes early or you didn't arrive at all. She was mid-sentence, dissecting the fourth quarter projections with the kind of surgical focus that made grown men sweat through their suits, when the door opened. Nobody opened that door without permission. Nobody. Eleanor stopped talking. The room stopped breathing. The girl who stepped through the doorway couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. She had 2 uneven pigtails, one higher than the other, like someone had tried their best in a dim light and with limited time. Her sneakers lit up with each step, little pink flashes against the polished marble floor, and she was clutching a manila folder to her chest the way you'd hold something irreplaceable. She looked around the room with wide, serious eyes and found Eleanor immediately, the way children always seem to locate the person in charge. "Excuse me," the little girl said, her voice smaller than a question but braver than most of the adults in that room. "Are you the boss?" Eleanor Voss, who had once made a venture capitalist cry at a conference in Manhattan, stared at this child and felt something shift beneath her ribs. "I am," Eleanor said. "My dad dropped this," the girl said, walking forward like she owned every inch of space between them. She held out the folder. "He said it was important. He said he was gonna lose his job if the boss didn't get it. He didn't know I was listening, but I was." She set the folder carefully on the mahogany table in front of Eleanor. "He's the one who cleans the bathrooms. His name is Raymond. He cries sometimes when he thinks nobody can hear." Not a single person in that boardroom moved. Eleanor looked down at the folder. It was one of the maintenance incident reports, a form her facilities team was required to submit monthly, documenting safety compliance across the building. Raymond's report. She had sent a memo just last week warning that any department missing their compliance documentation by end of quarter would face consequences. Her legal team had insisted on it. She had signed off on it without a second thought. She opened the folder. Inside was the report, filled out carefully in block letters, every line completed, every checkbox marked. There was a sticky note on the top page written in the same deliberate handwriting. It said, "Please, I have a daughter. I can't lose this job. I left this on the wrong floor by mistake. I'm sorry." Asterisk. Eleanor read that note twice. She had written a lot of things in her life, shareholder letters, termination notices, acquisition proposals that reshaped entire industries. She had never felt a piece of paper like that before. Something about the handwriting, the effort in every letter. The word please sitting there at the start like a man on his knees. "What's your name?" Eleanor asked the girl. "Maya." "How did you get up here, Maya?" "The elevator. I pushed 42 because that's how old my dad is." She thought about that for a second. "I don't know if that's why it worked. But it did." One of the board members made a sound that might have been a laugh. Eleanor silenced him with a look. "Where is your dad right now?" "He's looking for me. He doesn't know I came." Maya's expression shifted the smallest amount, the way a child's does when they realize the adult is asking about the thing they might be in trouble for. "Am I in trouble?" Eleanor closed the folder. She thought about the memo she'd signed. She thought about the word please. She thought about a man cleaning bathrooms on the 42nd floor, going home to this girl with the uneven pigtails, trying to make the math of his life add up the way the math of her quarterly reports had to add up, precise and unforgiving. "No," Eleanor said. "You're not in trouble." She stood up. 14 board members watched their CEO push back her chair and walk toward the door. She paused, turned back to her team, and said in a voice that allowed no debate, "We'll pick this up in an hour." Then she looked at Maya. "Come on, let's go find your dad." They found Raymond on the 39th floor, his cart sitting abandoned in a hallway, his face the color of a man who had calculated exactly how bad things had gotten. He was asking a colleague if they'd seen his daughter when he turned and saw Eleanor Voss walking toward him with Maya holding her hand. He looked like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Mr. Raymond," Eleanor said, because she realized she didn't know his last name, had never known his last name, had passed him in the hallway likely dozens of times without registering him as anything more than a uniform. "Yes, ma'am," he said. It came out barely. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about Maya. I didn't know she knows she's not supposed to." "Maya, what did you do?" "I fixed it, Daddy," Maya said. "She did," Eleanor said. "She came to the boardroom and delivered your report herself." She held up the folder. "I have it." Raymond put his hand over his mouth. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and tired eyes and a face that had learned to manage itself in difficult moments. But he couldn't manage this one. His eyes filled and he looked away, and Eleanor understood without any explanation the particular shape of that kind of tired, the kind that comes not from one hard day but from years of days where you are invisible, where you do everything right and it's still not enough, where the machinery of a place the size of a building doesn't register that a human being is caught in its gears. She had built this machinery. She had signed the memo. "I owe you an apology," Eleanor said. Raymond blinked. "Ma'am, the policy that threatened your position, it was designed for accountability, but it should have had a process for honest mistakes. It didn't. That's on me." She paused. "Your report is complete. Your record will reflect that. And I'd like you to send Maya to HR tomorrow with you." She saw the fear return to his eyes and shook her head. "Not for trouble. We have a new program. Scholarship support for employees' children. I've been meaning to launch it for 2 years. Maya just moved it to the top of my list." Raymond stared at her. Maya pulled on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, the boss is nice," Maya told him seriously. "I think she was just busy." Eleanor laughed. It surprised her, caught her off guard like a sound she hadn't heard in a long time and wasn't sure she still knew how to make. It came from somewhere real, somewhere unpolished, and it echoed in that empty hallway and it didn't stop as quickly as she expected it to. Raymond laughed too, the relief in it almost painful to hear. Eleanor went back to the boardroom. The meeting resumed. The fourth quarter numbers were exactly where they needed to be, and the executive team talked about growth strategies and market positioning in the language of expansion that Eleanor had spoken fluently for 20 years. She was present for all of it. She moved through the rest of her day with the same efficiency that had built everything around her. But something was different. She went back through her calendar that evening, alone in her office with the city spread out below her like a circuit board. She thought about the scholarship program she'd talked about launching and never had. She thought about her building's 400-plus employees and how many of them had children. How many of them had someone at home who would walk into a boardroom in lit-up sneakers to save them if they could. She thought about the sticky note. "Please, I have a daughter." Asterisk. She drafted 3 new internal memos that night. One was about the scholarship program. One was about revising the compliance policy to include a formal grace period and appeal process. The third was shorter than the others, a single paragraph. It was addressed to all department heads and it said, simply, that she expected every person in a management position to learn the names of every person who reported to their floor. Not their job title, their name. She would be audited on that too, starting with herself. Raymond told people that story for years. Not to make himself seem special, not to make Eleanor seem like a saint, because she wasn't, and she would have told you so herself, but because he believed something true was inside it. He'd tell it at his daughter's school events, and later at her college graduation, and later still at the small ceremony where Maya accepted a fellowship in early childhood education, where she stood in front of a room full of people and talked about growing up believing that most people were good, that most people just needed a reason to show it, that someone had taught her that when you see something that needs doing, you don't wait for someone older to do it. She never mentioned Eleanor by name. She didn't have to. Raymond always sat in the front row at Maya's events, and when she said that part, he'd press his hand to his mouth the same way he had in that hallway on the 39th floor, and the people around him always thought he was just a proud father. And he was. He was that absolutely. But he was also thinking about a woman who built a billion-dollar company and then stopped a meeting because a little girl with uneven pigtails and light-up sneakers walked through the door, and for one honest, uncalculated moment, had let herself be human. That, Raymond always thought, was the best thing either of them ever built.